So I'm sitting on house arrest. This is where the story gets absolutely insane. If people are hanging on right now, I go on house arrest. I'm there for a year and a half, and I'm waiting John McAfee to return from his prison in Spain. I hear, okay, so I all of a sudden my phone just blows up at my house. I'm on house arrest. I can't leave. It's really restricted. All these text messages. Bro, you hear about John McAfee? Bro, you hear about John McAfee? John. And then my lawyer calls me, and I go, what? And he goes, Jimmy, are you sitting down? I was like, oh God, what? He said, it looks like they found John McAfee in his prison cell hung. He goes, I don't know anything else than that. He said, this could change things for your case, and it may not, considering how long they've been looking for you and how much time they invested into finding you and stuff. He says they generally don't give you a free pass because of this, but we'll see. I say, okay, this is where I lose a father figure in my life. Although my dad was this loving, awesome guy, right. Big shoes to fill. I lose John McAfee out of my life, even though we had some problems. It felt like I lost.
You didn't want to see him die.
No, of course not. Yeah, he would have some demons, and yeah, he would have some dark stuff going on. But I loved him for what he had done for me. If there was any good, because there were some great times, there was some beautiful times, and there was some lows, and so to lose him, I was like, man, and then I'm facing all this time, and I'm facing 12 to 15 years in the feds, according to my lawyer and according to others, and so man, I'm laying there in my bed one night on this little mat my parents put out there for me. Super embarrassing. What am I, 40 years old now at the time, 39, 40 years old. And, I had all these dreams and aspirations, and now I'm just pending going to this federal penitentiary, the unknown. It was super dark for me.
Right.
And after all my time, I was super depressed, and I just wanted to end my life, honestly. And so I woke up I couldn't sleep. I just was up at 3 a.m. I'll never forget it. I just started crying, these tears on my pillow, and I just screamed out. I remember my mom saying, if you're ever in trouble, scream out the name of Jesus, in battle. And I had heard guys scream that out before, and I saw them die. A couple in the hospital. I remember a guy calling out for his mom while they were working on him, and then a guy calling out for Jesus, and these guys literally died in the hospital in front of me. There was a sheet there, but you could hear him screaming. It was terrible. A grenade went in their turret. But I remember just my mom saying, "Scream out Jesus," and so I screamed out. I said, Jesus. I said, I'm not asking you to get out of prison. I know I'm going. This is before I found out that McAfee had passed away. It's a little bit before that. But I said, Jesus, I know that I'm going to prison. I'm not asking you to get out of prison. I'm just asking you to show up in my life. If you're real, if you're real, if you're part of my life, I want to feel something. And I cried out from the bottom of my heart, man. I'm not even joking you. And the very next day, I get a call, and it's this guy, and he's like, hey, you want to go to Operation Restore Warrior, this nonprofit for veterans? And I said, who? And he's like, you put your name down months and months ago, long time ago. He says, do you want to go to Operation Restore Warrior? It's a nonprofit for veterans. It's a Christian-based, spiritual thing. And I'm like, brother, I'm on house arrest. I'm going to prison probably for 12 years, man. I'm sorry, And he goes, well, we don't judge. I was like, okay, but the judge ain't gonna let me. The Texas judge, the real judge ain't gonna let me. He goes, well, why don't you ask him? He was pretty, and I go, you know what? I just cried out at 3 a.m.
Right.
Here it is, 8 in the morning, and this guy calls me. So my lawyer puts it, my lawyer goes, okay, let me see. The Texas judge is like, oh, yeah, that boy from that veteran, this South Mason Dixon, yeah, let him go for 3 days. God bless that Texas judge. He allows me to go to Operation Restore Warrior for 3 days on the ankle bracelet, all that stuff. I show up there, and long story short, these guys are like, you ready to meet Jesus? And I'm like, guys, I'm sorry, man, but this is insane. Yeah, I'm not going to meet Jesus here. He goes, yeah, well, you're going to meet him. And he's going to tell you exactly what you're going to do for the rest of your life. He's going to give you purpose. They're so confident.
I know.
And I'm like, guys, I don't know if you noticed my skinny jeans, which are pretty atrocious, and the ankle bracelet monitor that's on right now. I say, I'm going to prison. I know you don't know anything about me. They didn't know anything about me. And they said, yeah, well, have faith. And I said, you guys don't really tell people that they're going to meet Jesus here and he's going to speak to them. I was amazed at their confidence and boldness. And the guy goes, 100%. He just stared at me. And I go, I go, okay, and I laughed at him. And so I walked outside with my ankle bracelet on. I walked down this little path down this in Baltimore on this duck reserve. It's a beautiful property, and I'm walking down this thing. I'm just glad to be out of house arrest. And I walked down this road, man, and I cried out again my second time. I said, okay, God. I said, if you're real, I'm not asking you to get out of prison.
Listen, you want to skip this ad. I would too. But what if I told you there's a skip ads forever button?
Not asking for anything. I'm just asking you to show up in my life. And so I go back inside, and they said, hey, Jimmy, these two guys want to pray for you and talk to you. And they look like cops. I don't have anything against cops, but I was real weary of law enforcement by now and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so they sit there with their notepads, and they're pretty prim and proper, and I'm sitting there in front of them, knee to knee, and it's making me nervous. And of course, I ain't gonna say, I don't want to say anything. And they're like, Jimmy, tell us your story. And I'm like looking around for cameras, and I'm like, guys, I'm sorry, but you kind of remind me of police officers, and I don't feel comfortable. I'm not gonna say much here. Just want to. And so I start skimming around my story. Being vague about my story, very vague. And this guy, he looks at me dead in the eyes and he goes, and I skipped the part about McAfee in the big ship-sized house. And he says, you skipped part of your story. And I said, I looked at him, I said, no, I didn't. Like super confident. I go, no, I didn't. Like bluff, And he says, no, you did. You skipped part of your story. And I said, no, I didn't. Let's move on. And he says, was the part you skipped at, he goes, the Love Boat or the Love Shack? And he called the house that McAfee had was a big ship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I called it the Love Shack. He called it the nickname that I called it. And immediately, if I said something about you, Matt, that was deep in your past that nobody really knew about or couldn't research out or nickname, it got my attention. And I stood up and I said, well, I guess we're done here. And they said, where are you going? And I said, bro, I don't know what you're doing, but I'm a fragile man, and fragile men do stupid shit and crazy stuff. I said, I don't know what kind of game you're playing here, but I don't know how you know that. I said, but I'm out of here because you're not being honest, and that was scary. It scared me, it scared me. I said, and they said, no, Jimmy. They said, sit down. This is what we do here. And I said, and I just looked at him and I thought, okay, we'll play this game. I said, okay. I said, if you know so much about me and you just identified a house, you were lucky. I said, tell me more. Tell me then. I'm not going to say nothing. If you know about me, I'm done with this interview. You tell me the rest of the part. And he goes, and they looked at each other, and the guy nodded like, okay, go ahead. And he goes, okay. He goes, when you walk through this door of this Love Shack or Love Boat, he goes, there's a jacuzzi on the side, on the right, and then you walk up these 3 steps, and there's a screen door, and then another door, and you walk in. And I said, and it was so accurate, I just couldn't believe it. I go, and that's not good enough. He says, okay. And there's a gray metal door, and there's a fake door that covers it. There's an armory where you keep all the weapons. And I said, okay, let's go. More. I don't care. That's not good enough. He says, okay, you go up the stairs. There's an elevator and a cherry door covering the elevator. I said, tell me more. He goes, you go up the stairs, and there's these rooms, and he goes, there's these grid coordinates. Or I said Latin longs. I corrected him, you're wrong. It was Latin longs. And he goes, okay, Latin longs, these numbers and these names, Tahiti, Thailand, on all these rooms, just like the Love Boat. And I said, tell me more. If you know so much, tell me more. He says, okay, you go to the 3rd deck. There's 3 decks. He says, and there's this massive. He's trying to visualize this. He says, there's a big ship steering wheel. That's what it is, ship steering. And I go, and I'm shaking because there was a massive ship steering wheel in front of my office, like a real one.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just kind of starting to shake because I'm not in reality. I'm am I having a psychotic episode? And I'm on house arrest. I know I'm on drugs. And so I said, tell me more. And he goes, okay. He says, it overlooks a sound, and that's the sound I told you about with Blackbeard. He says, and then there's boats that come up in a canal to the side of the house, and there was boats that would come up to the side of the house. And all I can say is, tell me more. And I'm in his face. I'm probably spitting in his face. I'm angry. I'm mad. I'm yelling at him. Tell me more, bro. If you know so much, tell me more. Up in his face. And later on, he said he was scared, because I got this ankle bracelet. I'm up in his face. Angry. I'm angry because I don't know how.
This feels like this is like 2 feds that were in a raid that had gone in the fucking house.
Right.
This is 2 FBI agents that
they
lured you to this place.
Right. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I'm thinking these guys are cops, and they're playing some kind of sick game on me. And so that's what's going on in my head. So I keep telling him, tell me more. And I yelled one last time. I said, tell me more. And this is the last time I ever said it. I said, tell me more. Like, you motherfucker, you know? And he's like, there was a path that you used to walk down behind the house alone. And when he said that, I mean, there was a path I used to walk down and cry out to God.
Right.
And for some reason, that triggered me so hard, man. It hit me so hard that I just fell back into my seat like this, with my ankle brace and all, and just snot started coming out. And I just cried like a baby for a long time. They said, it's going to be okay, Jimmy. It's going to be okay. You know, Jesus is letting you know that he was with you on that path. And man, it could have been a lot of other places they could have said, and it would have been pretty cool, pretty weird.
Mm-hmm.
They could have guessed my birthday. That would have been cool, all these different things. But identifying a path that only I would walk down.
Right, that they couldn't have learned about.
That they couldn't have learned about. And that was very specific. It wasn't just telling me about a thing in my life. It was a very specific, sentimental time where I would walk down a path and I would look up at the stars and wonder, is there a God? Like, God, help me. Like I was always kind of lonely and lost after some things in my life, traumatic things. And so when they identified that path, I fell back in my seat. They prayed over me, and all I could say was, I could barely speak. I go, how? And he goes, I don't know how. He said, I just know that Jesus told me to keep answering you until you believed. And man, that's what it took for me to believe.
You know what? I don't know. Well, up until the end here, it made me think of that. I'm sure you've heard this story about the guy who's he's in a town. And the town's it's flooding. You ever heard that? Like, the town is flooding, and everybody's there evacuating the town, and there are people they're driving by in jeeps and you know, SUVs, and the military's there, and they're like, hey man, man, you got to evacuate, get in the jeep. And it's like, no, God's gonna save me. God's gonna save me. And then the water gets up so far they can't drive anymore, and he climbs up on the roof of the church, and the boats are going by, and there's boats going by. They're like, get in the boat, come on. He's like, no, God's gonna save me. God's gonna save me. And then it keeps going and going, goes up past the roof, and he climbs up on the steeple of the church, and a helicopter comes, and he says, and they're trying to lower a basket. He goes, no, God's gonna save me. God's gonna save me.
Unleash your creativity with Creative Fabrica, your go-to place for all of your print-on-demand.
And they finally take off, and then eventually it gets so high that he ends up drowning. And then when he gets up to heaven, he says, you know, God, I thought you were going to save me. What happened? He goes, well, I sent a jeep, a boat, and a helicopter. Like, what did you want me to do? Like, that's like, for your story, it's like, there are all these signs, and you're just going, no way. See this.
Yeah.
I mean, what did you expect? They're calling you on the phone. They got you down here. The judge sent you the fucking thing.
It took so much for me. It took so much for me, but I wouldn't dare. I was actually terrified to say, tell me more one more time. It was like when he identified that path, man, it was game over for me, because what I realized is no matter how many dark places I had been, no matter how hard I tried to run for myself, no matter what corner of the world I was in, doing mercenary, doing all kinds of dark stuff, God was chasing me down. Some people go, well, that's great, Jimmy, you found Jesus. I'm like, no, you must have not heard what I said. He found me, brother. I didn't find him. He searched me out from the lost and delivered me from a terrible pit.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like you found him. It sounds like you were running from him.
I was running from God, but there ain't you can run from yourself. You can run from the law like I did, but God is in every dark corner.
So, I'm sorry.
Basically, directly after that, the same guy said, I see a chessboard, Jimmy, and basically your case, whatever case is going on with you, is going to be dismissed. I said, bro, I said, he doesn't know. Yeah. He doesn't know. But certain things happen. McAfee was found dead in a prison. And then all of a sudden, my lawyer calls me, and believe it or not, the guy that revealed all that stuff about the house in that dark time, he said, I got a word for you when I was leaving after 3 days. Bro, I left a new man. I was still going to prison. But I was like flying like an eagle. And as I was walking out, he said, I got a word for you, checkmate. I said, what's checkmate mean? He goes, just checkmate. It's like when you play chess and win or whatever. I said, okay, I'll hold on to that, but I'm going to prison. And I also heard God say that I would be a lighthouse unto his people. You know how they promised I would hear from God? I actually heard that. Not in an audible voice. I can't explain it. I just know that's what I heard, like a lighthouse. I'll be a lighthouse to his people. So I go home. I think I'm going to be a lighthouse in prison. I'm going to be a preacher in prison, all this stuff, because I still thinking along those lines. But when I came home, my lawyer calls me when I'm back on house arrest. And he says, and the first thing he says is, Jimmy, checkmate. And I said, Arnold, what'd you say? And he goes, I said, checkmate. I said, what does that mean? And he says, don't you know? Haven't you ever played chess, man? And he goes, never mind, forget it, brother. He goes, all it means is your case is getting dismissed. And I said, Jesus told me my case was going to get dismissed. I sound like I went to church camp with mushrooms. Right. And I'm like, Jesus told me my case was going to get dismissed. He goes, Jimmy, he goes, man, I don't know about all that, but say a prayer for me, because I have never seen this in my practice as a DOJ guy or defense. In considering your case, I have never seen this particular